All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about the 6th grade standard evaluating, or EE, or for equations and expressions, 1. And in particular, this asks us to evaluate expressions using the correct order of operations, right? And you might remember the order of operations from 5th grade as being PEMDAS. And what we're going to try and do is learn how to do this. Well, first of all, in the first video, we're going to talk about what it means to evaluate something and what an expression is. Okay, so let's take a look at those two things to start with. In this picture here, we have a little house figure, right? And it tells us that we can find the area of this house by taking the height times the length and adding it to the height times the length divided by 2. Now, if you look over here, the first part shows us the height and the length. That's the area of a rectangle. If you just multiply those two things together, we get the area of a rectangle. The second part shows us the height of 3 and the length of 4 divided by 2. That gives us the area of just the triangle, right? So a triangle, remember, is just half of a rectangle. That's why we have to divide it by 2. So basically, this is a formula for finding the area of this figure. If we used numbers, we could write an expression, not a formula, but an expression. So here, let's write it as an expression. The height is 6. The length of the rectangle is 4. And then we look at the height of the triangle, that's 3, times the length of the triangle, that's 4. And if we divide that by 2, we'll get the area. Now, if we add the rectangle and the triangle together, right, if we add this part and this part, we will get both parts added together. This is an expression, right? It's a way of saying the area. It's a mathematical way of saying the area, right? So what does it mean to evaluate that? Well, to evaluate basically means to solve. Sometimes we call it simplifying, right? But we want to solve it down so that we just have one number. So we could say, what is the area? And we can answer not with a formula or not with an expression, but with just a number, right, of square centimeters. So to evaluate means to solve, or sometimes we call it simplify. So let's take a look here. If I had this rectangle, and I'm going to put the addition sign here, and I had this triangle, I could find the area, right? I'm going to start by finding the area of the rectangle. 6 times 4 is 24. That's the rectangle. And 3 times 4 is 12. Just make a note of that. 12 divided by 2 is 6. That's the triangle. And if I add the rectangle and the triangle together, I would get a number of 30, right? So that number for the area is 30. And if I label it, that would be 30 centimeters squared. So there we just evaluated an expression. Let's take a look at another one that doesn't have a picture that goes with it. Or actually, let me think about this. Let's take a look at why we need to use the order of operations. So here's the same example, right? 4 times 6, that was the rectangle. 3 times 4 divided by 2, that was the triangle. If we don't follow the specific order of operations, two people could get very different answers, right? So we have to agree on a specific order to do this in, right? You may have noticed that I did the rectangle and then I did the triangle, but if there was no picture there, you might not know that, right? So let's take a look at one way someone might solve this, right? They might say 4 times 6 plus 3 times 4 divided by 2. And they might not realize this was a rectangle and a triangle. And they might just read it from left to right. Sorry about that. So if we read it from left to right, what would happen, right? If we could say, well, 4 times 6 is 24. And then someone might say, okay, the next thing I should do is add, because that's the next thing I see as I'm reading from left to right. I see an addition sign. I should add 3 next. And then after that, I would multiply by 4. And then after that, I would divide by 2. So let's keep going in that direction. 24 plus 3 is going to be 27. And then next thing we're going to do is multiply by 4. And then after that, we would divide by 2. Next thing we would do is 27 times 4, which I think is 108. I hope that's right. Divided by 2. And the next thing I would do is divide this by 2, and that would come out to be 54. So some very reasonable person might think that the evaluated version of this expression, or the simplified version of this expression, is 54, that it equals 54, that those are the same things. Another person, might do what we did earlier. Just if we were following the correct order of operations, we would do multiplication first. We would save addition for last. Okay? So we'll talk about PEMDAS a little bit in the future, but I just want to show you how we can get two different answers here. You might remember the rectangle was 24 centimeters squared, and the triangle was 6 centimeters squared, right? 3 times 4 is 12, divided by 2 is 6. And if we save the addition for last, we would get an answer of 30, right? So two different people could get two different answers. And that's not going to work out for us. As mathematicians, we need to be able to say the answer to this problem is this, right? And we'd all agree that that's the right answer. So we need some way to stop people from just simply doing math left to right. This is not correct, right? We need them to follow a specific order of operations. This is correct, okay? So in the next video, we're going to talk about what that order of operations is so we don't get these two different answers.